Yeah. So, Happy New Year. Anybody make any New Year's resolutions? Have you broken it yet? I don't make resolutions, but I do pray that God will guide and direct me in the new year. So we are excited for our speaker today. I don't know that he needs any introduction from me, but I will do that. But make sure that you take a look at the things that are happening. There's a whole host of signups out there. Next week we'll be at La Hacienda again for our birthday lunch. I hope everybody likes that place. I do, and it's good food, good portions, and the indication that most people like it is that nobody wants to leave when we're done eating. So, and that will be next week. Sign up if you need a shuttle from here. We will have a shuttle from here. And we're excited to get going and into the new year. So this morning we have Judge David Peeples with us. I don't remember when I first met David. From my perspective, he speaks softly and carries a big stick. One of those kind of guys, you hardly know when he's around until he has something to tell you or say or to get involved with. I've often felt supported by him, even though I don't know that he knows me very well or I know him very well. And it's always, I have run into him, I think it was maybe a rehearsal dinner or the guys from the groomsmen at Easy's for lunch right before your son got married, and saw him there. Today he's going to be talking to us about the American court system and the rule of law. Is that a thing now? Does the law rule? And he's been a longtime member here. He's been an elder. He's been a teacher, and I think in the Bridges class recently, or maybe just a special class. And I know that people love his classes when he teaches here. And sideline, he's retired. He served for 36 years in the Texas judiciary system. That's why we can call him judge. And the Honorable David Peeples is here to share with us today.
Hello? There we go. Okay. Well, Joe, thank you for the kind remarks. I appreciate that. You mentioned walk softly and carry a big stick or speak softly. Just a story about that. When I was in the 11th grade, I had a great English teacher, and we were talking about ellipsis, where there's a quote and you remove something and you put the periods to indicate that. And she said, let me illustrate from Mad Magazine. You remember Mad Magazine? Mad Magazine had done something on ellipsis. And they said, when a lot of people think Teddy Roosevelt was talking about power of countries and so forth, and he said, walk softly, I think, and carry a big stick. And that's not what happened, Mad Magazine said. What really happened is this. One night, Teddy Roosevelt was ready for bed. President Roosevelt and his daughter Alice was there, and he said, Alice, honey, your mother won't let me have a snack before bed. I want you to sneak down and get a snack for me. Go down to the refrigerator and get me some ice cream. Walk softly and carry a big stick of ice cream to me for my bedtime snack. I just thought it was so creative of this teacher to do that. Now, I've asked Pat Stanley and Jim Klaus to just pass out. I've got some handouts. I want everybody to have one of these. I've got plenty for you. I'm giving you more information than you need with these handouts. My topic is the American court system and the rule of law, and my talk divides into those two topics. The court system generally, and what they do, what courts we have, and what the rule of law means. Everybody talks about the rule of law as being so important, and it is, but you very seldom do you hear anybody saying, here's what it means. And so we'll talk about that too. And then the last topic I want to talk about is religious faith and being a judge or judicial duty. So those three things, the court system, rule of law, and religion and faith. I'm going to wait till everybody gets a copy. You got one over here? All the way around, we need to go over here. Yeah, good. Now, I'm going to march through this outline, paragraphs 1 through 10, and on the bottom page below that is more information than I'm going to be able to give you, but it's there in case you want to look at it later on or something. We will go down the left column there about the different courts, but I want you to have these in your hand, and we're going to go through the outline, and every once in a while I'm going to say, look at page 2, and I'll refer to something on the chart of the court system, okay? I will leave time for questions. I look forward to that period of this presentation. If you want to interrupt with a question, I'll go ahead and try to do it, but I would really rather not be interrupted because we'll have time for that. And I think, a lot of times questions are asked, and it's something I'm going to get to a little bit later, so that's the thing about questions. But if you really are burning to ask one while I'm here, go ahead, and I'll do my best with it. Let's talk about the different levels of government. We're in a federal system, and there are 4 different kinds of government here in San Antonio right now, and in every state, every square foot in this country. There's the federal government. We know about that. Every state has its own state government. Ours is the legislature's in Austin, and that's where the governor is too. Every county has government, and a lot of places have municipal government too, city government. Little bitty towns out in the country probably don't have city government. They have county government, which takes the place. But certainly the big cities have all 4 kinds of government: federal, state, county, and municipal. And in San Antonio, we've got the San Antonio city system, and Alamo Heights has its own city government system, and other places all over the place. So there are 4 levels of government, and the same thing is true about the judiciary. There are 4 different levels of judiciary in this country, everywhere you go. Out in the rural areas, there'd only be 3: federal, state, and county. They wouldn't have a municipal system because they're just too small for that. But we certainly do in the big cities in Texas. And so that's true of just government generally and the court systems. Now, the Texas Constitution has a default system of courts. I've got the dates there, 1876, and then it had big modifications in 1891. But basically, since 1876, we've had at least 3 kinds of judge in every place in this state. There are district courts, the district judges, and that's what I was for many, many years. The biggest court of jurisdiction and the most powerful court. Every county has one of those, and Houston, they've got 60 or 70 different district courts in Houston. Dallas is a little bit behind. We have 27 district judges in San Antonio. Their district is Bexar County. Just south of here, there's a 5-county district: Atascosa, Jourdanton, Floresville, Karnes City, and a couple of other counties. Those 5 counties have 2 district courts, just the way that things grew up. Up in Kerrville, they have a couple of district courts. Bernie has only one. I think they're getting another one pretty soon. But there are places in the state where there's 1 district court for several counties. I think 6 counties is the largest district. But because of the sparse population, 1 judge is enough for those 6 counties, and that judge sort of rides circuit. But in the big cities, we've got the district is the county, and there's at least 1 district court, and that's a constitutional office. In addition, every county, all 254 of them, have a county judge. And ours used to be Nelson Wolf, now it's Peter Sakai. But that really is a county executive, because the county judge, this is a constitutional office. It's in the Constitution, and every county's got one. The county judge is the presiding officer of Commissioner's Court, which is county government. And counties are divided into 4 precincts, and each has a commissioner, a county commissioner. And we've got the same thing in Bexar County. They've got it in Kerr County, in Harris County, which is Houston, all over the place. And in the smaller counties, the county judge also is a real judge. He handles small criminal cases and handles probate cases and small claims. In the big cities, that's not true, because in the big cities, the county judge it's a full-time job. It's a huge job, especially in the big cities. But out in the country, the county judge is not only a judge, but the county executive. He presides over Commissioner's Court. But in Bexar County, our county judge is not really a judge. He's a county executive. Peter Sakai used to be a regular judge. And then the third office that's in the Constitution is the Justice of the Peace. And every county, almost every county, has at least 4. And the counties are divided into 4 JP precincts, and they're the same as the county commissioner precincts. And we've got 4 of those in Bexar County. And they run for election in 1/4 of the county. And they handle small claims. And the idea was, back when we were a very, very rural state, was sometimes it would just be horrible for somebody in the far eastern part of a county to have to travel so far to have their case heard, so they divided things up so you could have somebody close to you for the smaller cases. But the Justice of the Peace is that kind of judge. So there's either 3 kinds of judges that has at least 1, and of course 4 JPs. These numbers, if you're good at math, you'll wonder, okay, 254 counties, and then on the second page, if you look down almost to the bottom, there are 798 justices of the peace in Texas. The math doesn't prove true on that, because some places like Houston and Dallas have more than 4 JPs. And some counties are so small, they couldn't find anybody to hold the office that much. Really, some of them are that small. And so they have fewer than 4. But basically, that's the default system. Now, look at paragraph 3. We have trial courts and appellate courts.
3 more handouts. So
yeah, right here. Okay, thank you, Pat. Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you.
Yes. There has to be a place where the cases start out, where the cases are tried if there's a trial, and those are the trial courts. And I did that for a good many years. And then whoever doesn't like the decision has the right to appeal to an appellate court system. Look at the second page. Let me give you all a chance to find your seats and look at your handouts. Let's at this point go over the second page, which in the first column on the left has the various courts in this country, and I want to just sort of go through those. So you see the 4 different possible systems: federal, state, county, and municipal. And the federal system, the Supreme Court, we all know about that one. They sit in Washington, D.C. They have life tenure. There are 9 of them. And there are 12 courts of appeals. They all have the 48 states plus Alaska and Hawaii are all carved up and are in different circuits. And there are 12 of those, and they have 179 circuit judges in the whole country. And there are 677 district court, federal district judges or trial court judges in the federal system. There are 4 of those in Bexar County. I didn't check on this, but Texas has maybe 40. It could be 45 or 50. It could maybe not quite 40, but we've got a bunch of them. Now, Houston and Dallas have a whole bunch. Austin's got 2. We have 4. But these are federal trial judges. And then the second block there is the Texas state courts. We have a Supreme Court of 9 justices, and they hold terms of 6 years. They're staggered, and they serve those terms, and they're elected in partisan elections. We also have a Court of Criminal Appeals, which is the Supreme Court of this state for criminal cases. Only Texas and Oklahoma have that system. The other 48 states have one Supreme Court that hears civil cases and criminal cases, but in Texas and in Oklahoma, just for the way it happened in history, we have a Supreme Court for civil appeals, and the Court of Criminal Appeals, it's the Supreme Court for criminal cases. It's called the Court of Criminal Appeals for criminal cases, and the workload of both of those courts, I don't see how one 9-member court could do the work that both of those courts do. But in places like California, they have 7 that do everything. But here we have those 2 high courts. We have 15 courts of appeals. They have 83 judges on them. We have 487 district courts. That's the constitutional court. Every county has at least one of those, and some counties share one district court with other counties that are close to them. Places, the big cities have many, many, many district judges. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've had a new kind of court called business courts that handle huge civil cases, big oil and gas cases, and maybe if there's a constitutional issue and the Attorney General is involved, the business courts handle those. One takeaway that I want you to leave with is this is a complicated system. And we talk about rule of law. Rule of law, all of these judges participate in what I'm going to describe as rule of law. And it's not just the Supreme Court. It's not just the federal courts. It's all of them. Look at the third column, little block on the left. The county judge used to be Nelson Wolff for us. It's now Peter Sakai. That's the county executive. And in smaller counties, that's a real judge and the only judge at that level that they have in the small counties. There are also county courts at law, and these are just courts that are set up by the legislature to do work as the state has grown and as there's been more and more business to do, judicial business. Sometimes the local people will say to the legislature, we need another court. And the legislature, I'm sort of summarizing here, will say, in effect, those cost money. And the county will say, we'll pay for it all with county funds, and it'll be a county court chosen initially by the commissioner's court will appoint the judge or judges of those courts, and then they run for election like the other state judges in Texas, but it'll be locally done, paid for locally, and they can decide, we need somebody to do all those family law cases. Somebody doesn't want to do them, they'll say, let's give those to the new court that's created. But county courts at law, these are county courts that are not the constitutional county court, but they're created by the legislature. We have 15 of those in Bexar County. And basically 13 of them do criminal cases, the other 2 do civil cases. We have 3 probate courts when someone dies, whether they have a will or not. Things have to be wrapped up and taken care of, and the probate courts do that. And we have, the number has changed, but I think we've got 4 justices apiece. We used to have 5 or 6. And then we've got the various municipal judges. But those are the different kinds of judges in Texas. So let's go back to the outline. Trial courts, whatever happens there usually is not appealed. But if it is, it goes through the appellate system. And some cases reach the Texas Supreme Court. If they're criminal, some of them reach the Court of Criminal Appeals, but a lot of them, the last court that sees them is the Intermediate Court of Appeals, of which we have 15. At this point, I want to talk about subject matter. Cases basically fall into 2 categories, criminal and civil. A criminal case, there's been a crime committed, and somebody's charged with that crime, and the issue is whether the person's guilty, and if so, how much punishment. Civil cases are everything else. Consumer cases, oil and gas cases, business cases, family law cases, I did a lot of that. Probate cases are civil, but the world divides into civil and criminal, and these courts have those different kinds of cases. Sometimes there's specialization, and I've got a bullet point on that. In urban areas, it's very common for the district judges and the county court judges to not do everything, but to be criminal specialists, family law specialists, juvenile specialists, probate specialists. In the big cities, that's the way it is. Out in the country, the judges out there do everything there is: civil, criminal, probate, family, juvenile, do the whole works. And some of them do that in 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 counties, sparsely populated. Number 6, other American judges. Just for completeness, I want to make the point, as the country has grown, and Texas certainly has grown, there's just more need for more and more courts. There are more lawsuits. When I started, there were 19, and in 1981, there were 19 district courts in Bexar County. Now there are 27. The legislature has given us 8 more over the years, and has increased the number of county courts at law here in Bexar County. Just in my work life time here. One way of handling a bigger workload is to say, well, we already got the regular judge. We're going to give him or her somebody else to help. And sometimes those are called magistrate judges. Sometimes they're called associate judges or assistant judges. That in the federal system, for a long, long time, there have been specialists called bankruptcy courts, bankruptcy judges. And they're just totally separate from the whole system. And what they do, if somebody doesn't like it, then they can have it looked at by the federal district court in that area, and that district judge will look at it and decide that I'm going to affirm this or not. But bankruptcy courts are specialty courts. Immigration judges, I don't know how many of those we've got, but it's many, many hundred all across the country. Most of them, though, in the border states. And a very important kind of judge is an administrative law judge, and this is in the news. You talk about the administrative state, somebody will say there's a deep state, but it is just a historical fact that starting in the late 1800s, they came to a realization that Congress can't deal with all the details that need to be dealt with in a huge country like this. And so the Interstate Commerce Commission was created in 1887 to deal with railroads and things like that. And so the law developed, and by the way, this is controversial. I mean, a lot of people want to roll this back because these are unelected judges that are not responsible to anybody. And one question is whether they're responsible to the president, and when can the president remove these administrative law judges, these people in these agencies. But the reason for them historically has been legislation for a country like ours, or for a state like ours, is just so complicated in the details. Sometimes it has been thought that the reasonable thing to do is say, here are the broad outlines. This is Congress talking, or is the Texas legislature talking. Here are the broad outlines of how we want to handle this situation. The oil and gas industry, consumer issues, environmental matters, labor relations, and many, many other examples, hundreds. Here are the broad outlines. We're going to allow administrators to fill in the details and to find the facts. And then sometimes they'll say, this is how we want those decisions to be reviewed in courts. But these administrative law judges are judges of these agencies, and they have specialized subject matter. In the National Labor Relations Board, that's all they can deal with. They can't deal with the environment, and vice versa. So these are, item 6 is just some additional kinds of judges in addition to federal district judges, state district judges, state county judges, county courts at law created by the legislature, justices of the peace. There are a lot of them, and just for completeness, I've got item number 6 right there. Just a second. Okay, item 7. Different kinds of law, all different kinds of law. You know about constitutions. Texas has a constitution, you know the federal constitution, and I've got some parts of it quoted here that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. But the Constitution is basic law that if a statute conflicts with it, that statute is not valid. And a lot of times that's what litigation is about. So there's constitutional law. Statutory law is laws passed by the legislature. And I don't know how many pages of statutes are passed by Congress every year, but it's a lot, and it's true of the Texas legislature too. And Commissioner's Court has the right to issue statutes. Sometimes they're not called statutes. It'll be a code of regulations and so forth. The Commissioner's Court can make law, and the city council of our city can make law. And so those are statutes and rules and regulations. And these administrative agencies can make rules and regulations too that are the law. It's got to be in their specialty. It's got to be properly done. And sometimes the lawsuit is about, was this regulation of the environment or of health or whatever it might be, was it done legally and properly? And the lawsuit will be about that. Number 8, the Supremacy Clause. This is a really important part of the Constitution. The Constitution was drafted in 1787 and was ratified by the requisite number of states in 1789. And the original Constitution has this clause. Let's take a look at it. This Constitution and the laws of the United States passed by Congress shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound by the Constitution and laws passed by Congress, and also by administrative regulations and rules issued by these agencies that I was talking about. If those are valid, they've got to be obeyed in every state and every city and every county of the country. And that's because of the Supremacy Clause. And that's what is really involved in Minnesota and some of the states that are resisting ICE. You've got federal laws being attempted to be enforced, and people on the local level don't like it. And I'll talk a bit more about that in just a minute. But the Supremacy Clause is the law of this land, and it says that in these matters, the Constitution, the federal Constitution, federal statutes, federal rules and regulations, unless there's something invalid about them, they are the law of the land, and people in the states and cities have to obey them. And they have to be enforced by the judges of those states. Now, I would just say that in my long, 36 years on the bench, there were very, very few times that I had to apply federal law. Federal retirement benefits in a divorce, things like that, and I've had some things in my retirement. But it's very rare for me to deal with federal law. But sometimes state judges do enforce federal law, but it is rare. Sometimes federal courts have to apply state law. And so there's some overlap. But something called jurisdiction is very important, and that means that courts and judges, there's a playing field before them of what they can legitimately deal with. And they can't go outside the boundaries of that playing field. They can deal with only what they have jurisdiction to do. And so federal courts have certain jurisdiction, and beyond that, they can't go. And the same thing is true of state courts. Now, let's talk about rule of law. This is my one-sentence definition. I want you to look at paragraph 9. I say that the concept of rule of law refers to a society in which rules, law, known in advance, are applied fairly and even-handedly by impartial decision makers to everyone, including the government. Now, I put my initials there just to say that this is me talking. And I've thought about this for a long time. And just as an aside, I have loved the job that I've had over the jobs I've had. And one of the great things, the thoughts that I've had in the back of my mind all the way is I was doing my slice, my little part in contributing to the rule of law in this country, in contributing to a system in which the law, rules, not made up after the fact, but known in advance, laws passed now to apply to the future. Be very unfair to have a case come in and say, you know what, let's make up a law. It wasn't the law before and apply it to this case. That would be outrageous. But rules known in advance, applied even-handedly and fairly by impartial decision makers to everyone, rich and poor, my friends and people I've never heard of. This lawyer from San Antonio and that lawyer from Austin or Dallas. This person from Texas and that person from New York. The law needs to be applied fairly and even-handedly to everybody, rich, poor, etc., including the government. And I think that's a good working definition of what I think rule of law is. And so let's look at the bullet points under that. You've all heard it said that we're a government of laws, not of men. And that's a rough way of saying it's about law, rules, not about what someone says. Here's what I feel like. I'm going to just make it up for this case. That's not law. Saying, these are the rules that apply in the case. Here's what I think the true facts are about the situation. Here's my ruling on the facts based on the law. That is an effort to contribute to rule of law, as opposed to making up things afterward and favoring the local lawyer, favoring the Texan against the New Yorker, favoring the rich against the poor, or vice versa. Racial. This definition is my effort to say what I think we mean when we talk about rule of law being something that we have in this country. The first quote there. Like cases should be treated alike. That is a universal principle of justice. You shouldn't, think about it in your own home with children, those of you who've had children. You know, you've said no, child number one, you can't stay up past 10 o'clock. And the little brother says, well, why do I have to go to bed at 9 o'clock? Well, there may be a good reason. Those may be different. Those are not like cases. But at least that younger child is appealing to a universal principle of justice, saying, big brother gets to stay up till 10, why don't I? Big sister gets to stay out on a date. You know what I'm talking about. People inherently know that it's unfair when there's one set of rules for one person and a different set of rules for someone else. And that is true in the law, too. Like cases should be treated alike. That means, look at the second bullet point, that when we're talking about President Trump, it really ought to be about the presidency, not about himself. And I've got a couple of headlines here. This is from about a month ago. The headline is, High Court Weighs More Power for Trump. Really, what was at stake in these cases was how much power the presidency should have in this situation, more or less. Not how much we were willing to let President Trump have, but how much this president, who happens to be Trump, but the rule stated in the case is going to apply to everyone. And cases that were decided during the Nixon administration and the Clinton administration are law not just for Nixon and for Clinton, but those are precedents that apply today for Trump, applied years ago for Biden, and will apply in the future to the presidency. So the headline ought to be, High Court weighs more power for presidency. But it says for Trump. Here's another one from just a few days ago. Supreme Court grew Trump's power in 2025. Supreme Court increased Trump's power in 25. He is certainly the occupancy of that office right now. But the headline ought to be, Supreme Court grew or increased power of the presidency in 2025. You see the difference? I brought this. I want to let you pass this around. I want you to feel how heavy it is. This is 1,300 pages. This is a law school book, textbook. And it contains There are 4 authors to it, law professors, and it contains a lot of decisions by the United States Supreme Court and by some other courts too. But every judge on the Supreme Court of this country, and on the Texas Supreme Court too, and courts everywhere, are aware that they're deciding cases not just about this president or these parties. They're deciding making decisions and deciding cases that are going to be in the books for a long, long time, that are going to be fly-specked and analyzed in a classroom. The words are looked at and talked about in classes, and they know this. And so the idea, I say, that judges, professionals, are really interested in these persons, I think really they're aware of who's involved in the cases, and they have their own political views. But they're thinking in terms of the law that is going to be written in books, and there's going to be in books like this. This is just an example of something that's a law school book. I want you to just pass it. Don't spend very much time with it, but just probably. When I was on the Court of Appeals, an intermediate court, I was aware. Now, some of the cases that we decided, nobody's going to read them except the parties to the case because they were unique. But I was aware frequently that the cases, the decisions I was writing, and the words I was writing, the decisions I was making, would be read by people. And they wouldn't be looking and thinking, oh, good, so-and-so won. They were going to be looking, what is the law that this court is saying? Is it wise? Can you shoot holes in it? Or is it powerful, well-reasoned? Judges have pride like that. And I contend that it's very unfair for the Express News and other people in the news media to have that kind of headline that's all about Trump. Because for the professionals in these offices, it's about the law. And just don't keep that too long. I want everybody to see how heavy that is, and you can look at the end and see it's 1,300 pages, and that's just one book. And law school is about that kind of thing, and judges are aware that what they say is going to be looked at for a long, long time. Now, let's talk about the parenthetical under that bullet that says the same rules for Bush 41, Clinton, Bush 43, Obama, Trump 1, Biden, and Trump 2. Same rules for the presidency. Let's talk about presidential immunity. A year ago or so, the Supreme Court, in a 6-3, 5-4 decision, there were some disagreements, decided that Trump or the presidency couldn't be successfully sued for decisions that are involved in the core of the president's duties. Now, that was a decision that Trump people liked and anti-Trump people didn't like. But that's going to be the law for a long time. It'll be in the books. It'll be talked about. And it really was about the presidency. And they talked about decisions in the Nixon administration and the Clinton administration. And those involved Nixon and Clinton, but they really were a law about the presidency. And this immunity decision, I'll just say this and then I want to move on. I, as a judge, enjoy judicial immunity for decisions that I make in court, or if I'm making a decision at home and issuing it later. But for decisions that a judge makes, you just can't be successfully sued by somebody that gets mad about that decision. They can appeal and try to get it changed by an appellate court. But I'm immune. And no matter how outrageous someone thinks the decision is, or the Supreme Court's decision is, there's judicial immunity. And so what they did in the Trump case was say there's something like that for the president. You can sue presidents for a lot of things, but not for core decisions involving their core powers. Like cases should be treated alike. The point I'd like to make here is we ought to be able to step back and look at decisions like that and think, it's about Trump today. But really, it's about suits against Biden for what he did, or suits against the next president or the next president after that for what he or she may do in the future. The same legal principles that were made in the Trump case will be applied to the presidency generally. And one way to look at them is to think, would I like it when the Supreme Court said we're not going to let different states have lawsuits against the president about the January 6th? Suppose I'm a liberal and I think I don't like that. I mean, Trump should be able to be sued. Really, the way to think about it is, would I like it if in Alabama there could be a lawsuit about something Biden did? Or in the future, if it could be a lawsuit in the panhandle of Texas about what somebody else does. You got to think in terms of the law generally rather than who the person is. Forum shopping. I saw an article within the last week, and this is a short quote from this article. It says that there's a website called Just Security that tracks legal challenges to the Trump administration executive actions. Of 552 cases this year, the government has won 113. The plaintiffs, that's the people suing the administration, have won 186, and the rest are either waiting for a court ruling, the cases are closed, or they've been temporarily blocked. 552 cases, 186 successful, 113 unsuccessful. We haven't heard about very many of those. I say that the court system in this country is dealing with a lot, and a lot of it is below the radar. And the judges in those cases are doing their dead level best to do something that they'll be proud to put in a book that people are going to read and scrutinize over the years. The outline says there are 677 federal district judges in this country. When you file a lawsuit against the president or the Congress or whoever, you have a lot of choice as to where to file. And in these cases, most of them are being filed in California, Massachusetts, New York, Illinois. Back when President Biden was president, they were filed in Alabama, Texas, the panhandle of Texas, where they knew who the judge would be. And the same ability to choose happened back then when President Biden was president, as is happening now when President Trump is the president. And the rule of law view on this is you got to have like rules for like cases. You got to have some rules that apply to all the cases. And if it's okay for people to sue the Biden administration in Texas and Alabama, then maybe it's okay for them to sue Trump in Illinois, in New York, Delaware, where they'll get a more favorable hearing. But the rule of law view is you've got to look at the broader picture. Sanctuary cities and states. The horrible event in Minneapolis a couple of days ago. One way to look at that, the way I try to look at it is, the Supremacy Clause says on federal matters, federal law gets to control, even if the local people don't like it. Turn back the clock. All of us in this room were old enough to remember the civil rights struggle back in the 60s and 70s. The rule ought to be that federal policy is applied in the states now, and in the 1960s and 70s, the same federal principles should apply on racial matters in South Carolina and Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana. I mean, would we be allowing people to frustrate the police trying to enforce racial discrimination laws in the South? I mean, the same rules and the same principles, the Supremacy Clause, need to apply to the South in the 1960s that are being applied today, and that's the bigger picture of the rule of law picture of what's going on today. How it's going to be worked out, I don't know. But I do have confidence that the courts will muddle through. It's a great big bunch of people, intricate, and it's all over the country. Now look at the last bullet point there. The Fifth Amendment, 1791, and the 14th Amendment, 1868, contain these provisions. They say that the government can't deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and they can't deny the equal protection of the laws to anyone. That's the Equal Protection Clause and the Due Process Clause. Those are very, very important to the rule of law. Due process is basically it means a fair hearing, but it's a flexible concept, and the law is very clear on this. A person is entitled to a fair hearing, but not the same exact kind of hearing. In a death penalty case, or a case about a lot of money, you might need to have a lot of procedures. But if the issue is whether some student lost his laptop computer in school and wants to sue the law school for not having a fair hearing about whether his lost computer was found, there's not the same thing at stake on something like that. You can't have a federal trial involving private property of a student against a school, the same procedures you would have when somebody's on trial with the death penalty at stake. Due process means more in some situations and less in other situations. But it basically means a fair hearing, and how big the stakes are, that's important, and what the procedures might be. Certainly, anybody, before life, liberty, or property is taken. Life taken, the death penalty. Before liberty is taken, that means putting someone in jail. Before property is taken, it means fining somebody or issuing a judgment saying you owe somebody X amount of money. Before life, liberty, or property can be taken, you need a fair hearing, and the law it just depends on the circumstances of whether, certainly you're entitled to know about the lawsuit, to be able to bring witnesses, cross-examine the other side's witnesses, have a fair decision maker. So we've developed a lot of rules that contribute to rule of law, but they're not the same rules for every single situation, and that's the point I'm making. I need to hurry because we need to eat. I want to talk about religious faith and being a judge. When some new courts were created in 1981, and I decided whether to apply for one. And I prayed earnestly. Don't let me do this if it's not your will. Just if this is something that I'm desiring that's not in accordance with your will, God, just don't let it happen. So that was what I did way back then. Once I became a judge, I can't say every day, but most of the time I would start out the day asking for wisdom. Give me wisdom to do the right thing in the cases that come before me. And I think that was a comforting thing and a helpful thing to do. I don't remember the details of any of these cases. A lot of what judges do is without a jury. And there were 6, 7, 8 times when I had heard the evidence in a case, and I had to decide this mother or this father is going to be the main parent in this child's life, or whatever the issue was. And the evidence was conflicting. There wasn't any good decision. And so about a half a dozen times over the years, I would send the lawyers out, go out in the hall while I worked out my ruling. And a few times I just prayed, God, please help me come up with the wise decision in this case. And in every one of those situations, the light opened up very quickly, and something that I hadn't seen before came through my mind, and it was just, I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but I did. after that prayer. They didn't go to the well very often, but I don't remember ever doing that and not having some kind of an answer. I'm not talking about a voice. I'm not talking about anything like that, but I'm just talking about my mind became clear, and on the evidence that I had before me, a solution came to me that I just hadn't thought about before. I don't think there was ever a time in my career that the law required me to do something that I thought was against God's will, immoral or whatever. In family law cases, when you're deciding this mom or this dad is going to be the primary parent, the law that says do what's in the best interest of the child. The primary, your foremost consideration in these cases shall be what's best in the best interest of the child or children. Isn't that what we would all want to do? And so there was no conflict between my religious faith and my judicial duty. Dividing marital property. The law says, when you're dividing the property of these two people that have been married, do what is just and right. Well, that's a fair thing to do. So the point I'm making is the law didn't try to make me do something that I thought was immoral. If a judge ever feels that in this case I just can't follow the law, I just think it'd be immoral to do it, the judge can recuse or step aside in that case, and somebody else can be assigned to hear that case. And so that's the escape valve, which I just never had a feeling like that, but if I had, that would have been an easy solution. I've gone on a long time. I don't know if we need to eat. If you want to have questions, Joe, I'm going to leave it up to you, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have a question?
Ellen.
Judge Peeples, just kind of a two-part question, but they're kind of related. Disposition without trial. Could you talk about how that works? Because that's always a puzzle to me.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I've got that on the outline, and I skipped over it. I wanted to mention the vast majority of cases that are filed don't go to trial. The vast majority are settled agreeably. And I don't mean people's arm twisted and, but people, especially when they know, if we don't work this out, we're going to have to start testifying. And the reality of that is kind of like a student, who's just fiddled around, well, there's a test the next day, you get serious about it. Most cases settle. And in most criminal cases, there's a guilty plea. And that means that the person got a lawyer, is finally agreeing, like, I'll admit that I'm guilty and the punishment's going to be so-and-so, and there's no trial, and the judge makes sure it's voluntary and reasonable. And so those are, in civil cases, it would be called a settlement. In criminal cases, it would be called the guilty plea, or sometimes the state dismisses the case because it doesn't pan out. But that's what I think you're asking about. Anything else? I've gone on a long time.
Second part,
Oh.
on visiting judges. Could you tell us?
Yeah.
I know you've done that.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Texas has a very good system in which retired judges who don't hold office anymore and don't go to work every day at the courthouse anymore, but are still available to help out, can be, make yourself available. And I'm available, and I've gotten a lot of those assignments. And when somebody can't hear a case for some reason, or sick or out or whatever, overworked, overloaded, other judges can be assigned to fill in and hear those cases or that case. And they're called visiting judges. It can be somebody from here, somebody from all the way across the state. That's what that. Yeah, Emily says, can't lawyers object? Yeah, Texas has a procedure where the lawyers or the parties in a case like that can say, I respectfully object to this judge. And that judge can't hear that case. And that happens occasionally. But after they've done it once, they're stuck with whoever is the replacement. And it does happen sometimes that they think, ooh, I'd like to have the first guy. Yeah, good point. Anything else?
I do have a question. Sorry we were late. This is so timely because as we see political signs come up for judges,
Yes.
it's so
Yeah,
for what and
yeah.
what they believe. Is there a resource for lay people to look at judges and their work to see how fair they are besides the label that the person
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, the question is, I've been seeing a lot of signs for judges. They're running for election. Is there any resource that can help me make a good decision? And I can't think of a good, trustworthy resource. And if I could change one thing about the Texas system, I would say we would have those elections at a different time than when everybody else is running, and it would be nonpartisan, not partisan. I think the best you can do, the League of Women Voters used to put out a questionnaire and answers and so forth, but I don't know how helpful that is. Endorsements by people you trust are helpful. But I think the answer to your question is I'm just not aware of any resource, the Bar Association, that kind of thing. They don't do it. So the answer is I don't think there is anything. I'm sorry. Got to be truthful here.
On those articles that you read, the title, do you take the time to write to the writer and let him know what he did wrong? Because sometimes, you read the title and then you read the article and it's so misleading.
Yeah, yeah. Question is about do I take the trouble to write, and the answer is I didn't. My understanding is that there's some person who works for the Express News who puts the headline on the story. The author of this story, this is some guy at the Los Angeles Times, this is the one that says Supreme Court grew Trump's power in 25. The author didn't pick that headline. Somebody else did it. And the other one, High Court weighs more power for Trump, that's the Associated Press. They got to have a headline. And both of these articles I thought were pretty good. And I just think that it's not just about the people, the person, the parties. It's about the presidency in the long run. Now, right now, today, it's about the president we've got. But I take the long view. I guess that's what I'm saying. Good question. Thank you. Yeah. Joe, how about one more question? Way back. Yes. Is that Nancy?
It's Nancy.
Yeah.
My question really is, you say in larger areas such as San Antonio, there may be a judge or two that are specializing, let's say, in juvenile cases.
Yeah.
When that individual retires or for whatever vacates that position, is there a tendency for candidates who have that expertise to go for that same position, thinking this county wants to maintain two judges in charge of juvenile affairs? Is that a tendency to fill a empty slot with someone with the same interest in that?
The question is, when we have somebody retires or steps down from a bench, does the person or the people who seek that position, are they qualified and so forth? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. We have 3 juvenile judges in Bexar County, and without mentioning names, we had one that maybe more than one that really were not all that great. Others who are just fantastic. And it's just an imperfect system. But the answer to your question as to whether it's people who really know the area and specialists, I will say that generally, somebody for a criminal bench, the seekers of that bench have some experience in criminal law as opposed to civil law and vice versa. So lawyers will seek a bench where they have some experience, but some of them don't have much experience doing anything, and they're very young. So the answer is there's no guarantee of that for sure. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And David will be having lunch with us, and forgive me for not introducing Emily. We all heard her speak in the Legacy Luncheon the last one, and appreciate you. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone and everything that they did was praying and asking for God's direction? And that's not well received in our country today. I think that everything that we do, from the smallest to the biggest responsibilities, especially if we've trusted in a relationship with Jesus Christ, ought to be directed by His Holy Spirit. And I think that's why I certainly would feel more comfortable having someone like David presiding over a case for me, because I know his background and expect that he would likely be creditable, as opposed to some folks that haven't been credible or haven't even, and I think that's part of our responsibility as individuals committed to Christ to present that understanding and to challenge, but most of all, to live our lives as an example to what Jesus Christ is doing in our lives. And I'll stop preaching. I'll save that for another time in another place. But thank you so much for being here. He and his wife will be here for lunch. So make sure that if you're sitting at his table, that you give him time to eat lunch, and don't hold him hostage here, because the chicken will get cold. So there you go. Yes, Jim. For sure. Okay. Okay. And there's donuts. And it is fun to watch and to get yelled at by someone who says, "I don't need help. Let me work my own card. Go help them. They need help. I don't need help." It's a good experience and fun. And Morningside, Jim has been our promoter and chief elder dealing with Morningside for a long time. And yeah. Well, let me pray. Yes.
After the last midday Noels, I came by here to talk to Junior and find out what they were serving for lunch. And he was back there with 3 other staff members. And they came up to me and they said, "Thank you for the Christmas gift that you gave us." So they wanted me to convey that to y'all, that they do appreciate it. And they said it did help them out. So I just wanted to tell y'all thank you for them.
Well, let me pray, and then we'll have lunch together. Make sure you have looked at the sign-ups, and watch your email, and watch the bulletin for things that are coming up. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for David. Thank you for his commitment to you. And seems in his way sharing that it's not just a job, and it's a responsibility. And thank you that there are men like him, men and women like him, that take seriously on how to apply their personal relationship with you in making decisions. And thank you for the 36 years that he invested in this community. And thank you that we could hear from him today. Father, we pray that you be with us around these tables. We ask your blessing on the food. Thank you for the kitchen staff who prepares it, the household staff who serves it to us, and give us good fellowship around these tables as we enjoy this lunch together. In Jesus' name.